Coming up, the Reds get a walk-off win, and Aaron Judge has a great birthday. This is Locked On Game to Game MLB.
Every game, every team, every angle. Locked On Game to Game, your team every day.
Welcome in. You're listening to Locked On Game to Game MLB. I'm your host, Kainani Stevens. Thank you for making Locked On your first listen every single weekday. Nick Senzel hit a walk-off home run for the Reds yesterday afternoon to start the day of baseball off with a bang. Both Locked On Reds and Rangers have more after the exciting finish in Cincy.
And that is a sweep. What's up? This is Jeff Carr from the Locked On Reds podcast, and Nick Senzel walks them off. The homer streak is done. The Reds win 3 in a row after one harrowing week last week on the road. But you know what? That's in the past. Dubs all around. Reds get the win. Great pitching performance from Graham Ashcraft. And the bullpen, they might have let up that one run, but hey, pretty good performance overall for this Reds ball club. Great baseball win, beating up on the Rangers for 3 straight games. We got a lot to talk about on the next Locked On Reds podcast. Make sure you join us.
Hello, Payne, my old friend. The Rangers lose a walk-off home run, get swept by the Cincinnati freaking Reds. I'm Bryce Paddock, host of the Locked On Rangers podcast. This was just an absolutely miserable series and a miserable game for the Rangers. The only really good thing to come out of this one is John Gray got his 1,000th career strikeout. He's had 2 strikeouts in his last 3 games and delivered a quality enough start, a decent outing out of the bullpen for Josh Sborz, a couple of scoreless innings, and in high leverage, the Rangers were able to rally back in the 9th inning and tie it up, but It was awful. It was just an awful game, an awful series. Josh Young got hit in the hand and had to leave this one. Thankfully, his hand isn't broken. Travis Jankowski, who's been a revelation early, had to leave this game with another injury. It was just awful in Cincinnati. Thankfully, the Rangers are coming out. Get them out of Ohio.
The Orioles beat the Red Sox yesterday to continue their hot start to the season. Locked On Orioles looks at another Baltimore win.
Make it 5 series wins in a row for the Orioles as they take down the Red Sox 6-2 on Wednesday afternoon to take 2 out of 3 in the series. O's now 16-8. This was a pretty clean game by the O's, I will say. Probably didn't come up with as many hits with runners in scoring position as you would like, but they still capitalized. Santander's sac fly in the 1st inning, his sac fly in the 7th inning. Ryan McKenna had a couple big hits. Tyler Wells wasn't as good, but I'll take 5 2/3 with 2 runs anytime out there for Tyler Wells. The bullpen got into a little bit of trouble, but who else but Yennier Cano just continues to get pretty much everyone out. Rest in peace to his perfect streak. He did allow a base runner on a hit batter, but still no hits for Yennier Cano. Felix Bautista a little shaky, but closed it off. But general, after Tuesday night's game was kind of sloppy and ugly, this was just kind of a clean game, I felt like, for the Orioles. A nice little 6-2 win to win the series. And I'll recap it all on Thursday's episode of the Locked On Orioles podcast.
The White Sox couldn't find any offense in an 8-0 loss to the Blue Jays yesterday. Locked On White Sox recaps a 7th straight Chicago loss.
The Chicago White Sox were embarrassed once again by the Toronto Blue Jays. They lost 8-0 on Wednesday afternoon. Hey, I'm Nick Borowski from Locked On White Sox. At least the Chicago White Sox kept it consistent for the 2nd game in a row. They managed just 4 hits. The White Sox were swept by the Jays right after being swept by the Tampa Bay Rays. White Sox are now on a 7-game losing streak and have dropped to a 7-18 record to start the season. White Sox dropped Luis Robert Jr. from the 1 spot to the 3 hole. He went 1 for 4 with 3 strikeouts. The White Sox return home trying to get anything going with Dylan Cease on the hill against the Tampa Bay Rays on Thursday night. For more, check out the Locked On White Sox podcast.
Coming up, a big Major League debut on the mound for the Guardians. This is Locked On Game to Game MLB. Today's edition of Locked On Game to Game is brought to you by BetterHelp. Getting to know yourself can be a lifelong process, especially when we're all growing and changing as we get older. Therapy is all about deepening your self-awareness, figuring out who you are, and talking to a therapist can really help you do that. If you're thinking about doing therapy, BetterHelp is a great way to start things out. It's entirely online, designed to be convenient, flexible, and suited to your schedule. All you have to do is fill out a brief questionnaire questionnaire to get matched with a licensed therapist, and you can switch therapists at any time for no additional charge until you find the right person that you want to talk to. So discover your potential with BetterHelp. Visit BetterHelp.com/LockedOnMLB. Today, you will get 10% off your first month. That's BetterHelp, HELP.com/LockedOnMLB. Welcome back. You're listening to Locked On Game to Game MLB. I'm your host, Kainani Stevens. Thank you again for making Locked On your first listen every weekday. Tanner Bibby made his MLB debut last night and struck out 8 Rockies on the way to a win. Locked On hosts from both teams go over how it played out in Cleveland.
Rock on Rockies fans, Paul Olden here from the Locked On Rockies podcast. Well, the Rockies can't get the sweep. The lack of runs comes into fruition, but the big storyline, that's all kind of irrelevant for the Rockies. German Marquez leaves the game yet again with an arm injury. Apparently, it's not the same area that he was hurting before, because this was his first return off of the IL. What does this mean for the Rockies? Well, they also just DFA'd Jose Urena. The thin starting rotation just got more thin, especially if this is going to be an injury that requires Marquez to miss his next start or next couple starts. Noah Davis has already been called up and is replacing Jose Urena in the bullpen. So is this a Rockies team that's going to have to turn yet again to the minor league system for a promotion? I think that it might be the case. We'll be breaking it all down right here on Locked On Rockies.
Apparently the key to success for the Guardians is to start rookie pitchers, and why not? You've got some good ones in the minors. Sunday, Logan Allen comes out and dominates and gets the Guardians a win, and they can't win a game otherwise unless they put a rookie pitcher out there, apparently, as Tanner Bibby made his Major League debut on Wednesday afternoon, and he is the 4th pitcher, or the 5th pitcher, I believe, to strike out 8 batters in his Major League debut, which Logan Allen did just a couple of days ago. You saw what the hype was about. Tanner Bibby went out there, and honestly, without his best fastball command, went out there and threw most of his pitches for strikes. The fastball command came along for him as the afternoon went along. He was able to do everything else pretty well, though. He missed 8 bats, 8 for 8 strikeouts throughout the game, and the offense did just enough to get him a win in his Major League debut. Good for the kid, and hopefully he and Logan Allen stick around. There's no reason these guys shouldn't be back in the minors, because, hey, it's the last 2 games the Guardians have won. Stay tuned to Locked On Guardians, as we're going to relish this win in tomorrow's episode.
Aaron Judge drove in 3 runs on his birthday, and the Yankees beat the Twins on Wednesday pretty easily. Locked On Yankees has more after a big day of offense for New York.
This is Stacey Gotsoulias of Locked On Yankees, and the Yankees beat the Twins 12-6. Hallelujah. They scored runs. Actually, they scored the most runs they've scored all season. Aaron Judge was 3 for 4 with 2 doubles. He drove in 3 runs, had a walk. It's his first multi-hit game since April 11th. It's been 2 weeks since that's happened. That's a long time for Aaron Judge. So he woke up on his birthday. Aaron Judge gave us a present. Thank you, Aaron Judge. Anthony Volpe had a good game. Actually, everyone had a good game on the offensive side. Everyone had a hit. It was the most runs they've scored all season. It snaps that losing streak, and it salvages the last game of the series. This is great. So now they go to Texas on a high note instead of flying to Texas having lost 4 in a row. So this is good. There were some negatives in the game, namely Domingo Germán giving up 3 home runs. Not the first time he's done it, and probably not the last. But again, Yankees scored 12, so, it's fine that he gave up that many home runs, but he needs to not do that in closer games. So we have everything you need to know about this game on the next Locked On Yankees, plus a preview of the first game against Texas, because there is no break. They were flying into Texas, and they are playing them on Thursday. So we will be telling you everything you need to know about that as well. So tune in.
The Padres scored 3 runs in the last 3 innings to power past the Cubs at Wrigley Field last night. Locked On Padres and Cubs have more after San Diego's victory.
Jesus, Tatis, he's back! Ah! What's going on, everybody? Javier Reyes here, Locked On Padres podcast. The Padres win, bouncing back from a rough game last night, winning Game 2 against the Cubs 5-3, and Tatis with 3 RBIs on the night. Really, really cool stuff, especially considering like that little dance he was doing the other day, and kind of being in the spotlight a little bit because of that. I love the dance for what it's worth. I think that was great. And it's nice to see him like the game after, come up big for the Padres, unlike, unfortunately, still struggles from Juan Soto and Manny Machado, who's first at bat of the game, by the way. I don't know what the heck that was. It was rough to watch. Drew Smyly's a good pitcher, but come on, man. We're still waiting. But don't forget about Nick Martinez, who is a guy who seems to have like the stamina of a starting pitcher, but not always effective as one. But out of the bullpen, he can be multiple innings. Sometimes he can even close. So he's just like the Swiss Army knife for the team. 3 scoreless innings pitching tonight. He was awesome, and I love him in the bullpen role. So don't forget about him. Show appreciation for Mr. Nick. He's great. And hopefully they can take tomorrow afternoon's game. That would be lovely. And hopefully the offense can just do a little bit more. That would be great. But until then, guys, of course, as always, stay faithful.
Cubs lose a tough one. Had a 3-2 lead in the 7th to the Padres. Lost 5-3. Too many games this year the Cubs have lost when they've been leading late in games. Too many of them. I think there's 3 of them already in a 23-game stretch. And, you know, you look at the run differential, it's the best in the National League. So why is this team just 13-10? That right there. They have lost too many games this season. I'm not going to get into statistics. I'm not going to get into recaps. They have lost too many games this season when they have been leading late or tied late. And early in the year, in a small sample size, that's the difference between being 13-10 and 16-7. And that's where they're at. And they got to clean that up and clean it up quickly, or they're gonna, they're not gonna be able to make the run they want to make this year.
The Diamondbacks shut out the Royals yesterday behind Zach Gallen, who has now thrown 28 straight scoreless innings. Locked On Diamondbacks goes over a solid home win for Arizona.
The milkman, Zach Gallen, delivered once again in the series finale to the Kansas City Royals, 2-0. Miller Thomas of Locked On Diamondbacks here. Zach Gallen is locked in once again, and it feels like every time I do it now after a Zach Gallen start, that's what I have to say, because Gallen is now up to 28 scoreless innings after going 6 1/3 with 12 strikeouts against the Kansas City Royals. No walks, only 4 hits allowed. He now has the MLB lead in strikeouts, and over the last 4 starts, I think he has 40 strikeouts to just 1 walk. Like, it's insane what Zach Gallen is doing right now. And in his 5 starts this month, 44 strikeouts to just 2 walks. So, like, Zach Gallen has been absolutely insane with what he's doing right now, and he's trying to break his most recent streak of scoreless innings of 44 just set last season. So Zach Gallen, I wouldn't bet against him to do it, because the man is too locked in right now, and he's carrying the D-backs, and he's going to win a Cy Young at the end of this season.
Coming up, the Phillies come back late to beat the Mariners. This is Locked On Game to Game MLB. Today's edition of Locked On Game to Game is brought to you by eBay Motors. A championship team is about each player being a perfect fit. Same with your vehicle. So for parts that fit, head to eBay Motors and look for the green check. Stay in the game with eBay Guaranteed Fit. ebaymotors.com. That's right. eBay Guaranteed Fit, only available to U.S. customers, eligible items only. Exclusions do apply. Welcome back. You're listening to Locked On Game to Game MLB, local experts going over all of the biggest stories from baseball. Thank you once again for making Locked On your first listen every weekday. The Astros held the Rays to just 2 hits and handed Tampa Bay a second straight loss at home. The Locked On hosts from both teams have more, as Houston seems to have the secret to winning in Tampa.
H-Town Wheelhouse, who had Locked On Astros, and the Astros win a 3rd series in a row. They started it with Toronto, they went to Atlanta and swept them, and they took 2 of 3 from the Rays, a red-hot Rays, might I add you. A second straight shutout. Hunter Brown takes them out after Luis Garcia's phenomenal performance and says, you can do that, but I can do better. 7 innings, 8 strikeouts, only 2 hits, only 2 walks. Neres and Presley came in and closed the door. They got contributions from Yainer Diaz, from Jeremy Pena, who had a multi-hit game, Kyle Tucker, and Mauricio Dubon, who extended his hitting streak to 20 games. The Astros look good. They are a half game behind the Rangers, who recently got swept by the Reds, and they return home for a 7-game homestand where they will start the first 3 against the Phillies this weekend. Stay tuned into Locked On Astros. Make sure you subscribe to our YouTube channel. Check us out every dayers on Apple, Google, or Spotify, or wherever you get your podcasts. We're your team every day. Go Stros.
I'm Kevin Weiss, co-host of the Locked On Rays podcast, and the Tampa Bay Rays are officially on a losing streak. Only 2, though. Losing streak of 2 as they fall to the Houston Astros by a score of 1-0. The Rays are now 20-5 on the year, and Last I checked, they've gone 19 innings now. 19 straight innings without scoring a run. They'll look to change that in a 4-game series against the Chicago White Sox in what will be relatively chilly, windy, rainy conditions. Not ideal for a Rays team that's used to playing indoors and likes the warm weather. Silver lining out of this Rays loss, Josh Fleming, who struggled off and on for the last several years, pitched 6 strong innings, and Manny Margot, who struggled all this season, got 2 hits as the number 9 hitter. Not much more to glean from that, so the Rays will look to try to keep their mark of the best record in baseball going forward.
The Phillies shocked the Mariners with 2 runs in the bottom of the 8th to beat Seattle by a run yesterday. Locked On Phillies tells us how Philadelphia turned that loss into a win.
The Phillies take Game 2 against the Mariners. Connor Thomas, your host of Locked On Phillies. Wasn't an easy game, and giving up a grand slam early doesn't help you. J.P. Crawford, I mean, I guess you kind of wish he was still here, but whatever. It happens. You move on from guys, and I'm glad he's doing well in Seattle, but also glad the Phillies won this one. A great 8th inning comeback by the Philadelphia Phillies. A good close-the-door effort by Jose Alvarado. And honestly, the Phillies really needed this one. Go back, watch a couple episodes ago, Locked On Phillies, and I told you 6 runs is probably going to be what the Phillies need to win this series. 6 runs every game. Well, they lost 5-3 yesterday. 6 runs would have done it. They win with 6 runs today, winning 6-5. We'll see what happens tomorrow, but about spot on. You want more insight like that? Check out the next episode of Locked On Phillies as we recap the Phils win.
The Angels and Athletics split the first 2 games of a 4-game set in Anaheim, and our Locked On Angels host goes over a dominant LA win in Game 3.
Well, if you pitch good and you hit good, then you're going to look good and you're going to win. And the Angels won on Wednesday night. Hey, everybody, it's Mike Frisch, one half of Locked On Angels. The Halos got an 11-3 victory over the Oakland A's, led by Patrick Sandoval on the mound. He pitched good. 7 innings, only the second Angels starter to do that this year. The other, well, of course, it's Shohei Ohtani. And speaking of Ohtani, he hit his 6th home run in this game. He was in a 5-for-33 funk, and he broke out of it with a couple of hits, couple of RBIs, and that home run. Brandon Drury hit a home run. Hunter Renfroe hit a home run. And the Angels find themselves 1 game over 500. Hooray! 13-12. And John and I are going to talk all about this game on Locked On Angels. We hope you'll join us.
The Cardinals and Giants went into last night's matchup headed in opposite directions. San Francisco had won 4 in a row before Wednesday. St. Louis had lost 6 of their last 8. That trend continued with a San Francisco win yesterday, and our Locked On hosts with both teams go over the final.
We knew the Giants were much better than their horrible 6-13 start. And guess what? Right after that, 5 wins in a row against 2 good teams. I know the Cardinals are struggling right now and have a 9-16 record, but they're a good team. The Mets are a good team, and the Giants have won 5 straight against them. And this was just a really good overall game. Paul Goldschmidt hurt the Giants. What else is new? But the Giants offense banged out 13 hits, a bunch of extra base hits, Slater with a double, Estrada with a double, Wade Jr., who wasn't even originally in the lineup, hit a triple and a homer, his first ever homer against a lefty. He continues to just have great at-bats. And Wilmer Flores homered as well, and the bullpen kind of came through when they needed to. Camilo Doval got Goldschmidt to ground into a double play, representing the tying run, nervous time in the 9th inning. But just a great win. 5th in a row. Giants are right back in it, 11-13. We'll break it down tomorrow on Locked On Giants, where it's your team every day.
The St. Louis Cardinals are broken, and the Giants once again take full advantage of it. It's JD from Locked On Cardinals, and tonight on How Can the Cardinals Blow Another Lead, it was Lars Nootbaar's turn as he decides to make a routine error by dropping a fly ball in center field with 2 outs in the 5th inning. That puts runners at the corners, and then Jordan Hicks spikes a slider. That wild pitch brings in the runner from third, making it 3-2. And the Cardinals never sniffed the lead again. Fundamentally, this team is a complete dumpster fire. They can't hit with runners in scoring position. 1 for 8 tonight. They can't field. 5 errors in their last 4 games. They can't stop the running game. They give up 3 stolen bases tonight. They can't keep the ball in the ballpark. They give up 2 more home runs tonight. Every aspect of this team outside of Paul Goldschmidt, who goes 4 for 5 tonight with 2 home runs, is an absolute disaster. And there are no signs that it's going to get better anytime soon. For the latest updates and info, be sure to keep it locked on Cardinals.
That's a wrap for this edition of Locked On Game to Game MLB. Thank you for making Locked On your first listen every weekday. Now go make sure you're subscribed to Locked On MLB and your favorite team's Locked On podcast on YouTube and wherever else you get your podcasts from. I'm Kainani Stevens. This has been Locked On Game to Game.